Welcome to Diamonds and Dumpster Fires, the show where we talk about finding strength when life falls apart. I'm your host, Melly, and around here, resilience isn't perfection. It's falling flat, getting back up, and maybe laughing about it later. From breakups to breakthroughs, we mix faith, neuroscience, and a little sass to help you rebuild a life that actually feels like yours. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, resilient ones, and welcome back to Diamonds and Dumpster Fires. Today, we are going to be talking about something that honestly every human being struggles with at some point, and that is waiting. Whether it's waiting for an answer, waiting for clarity, waiting for someone to text you back, waiting for test results, waiting for a job offer, waiting for your relationship to improve, waiting for some kind of direction, or waiting for God to do something. And I think one of the hardest parts about being human isn't always those painful experiences themselves. Sometimes it's even more painful to deal with uncertainty. Because at least, when you're in the midst of the dumpster fire, you kind of know what you're dealing with, right? But when things are uncertain, your mind might keep spinning. Your nervous system will stay on high alert, and your emotions will be exhausted. I think we love certainty so much that we will often spend, tons of time refreshing an email inbox, maybe something like 17 times in 10 minutes. Like that will personally assist God with the timeline. Tell me it's not just me that does this. And we think, okay, maybe this time when I refresh that inbox, it's going to unlock my destiny. And if we're honest, this kind of waiting can bring out all kinds of things in us: fear, control, overthinking, doom spirals, frustration, resentment, hopelessness, even numbness. So today, I want to talk about the neuroscience and the faith aspect of waiting. And then I want to walk through an exercise from Renewed Mind that was specifically designed for a moment just like this. And the reason I know it was designed for a moment just like this is because this is actually one of my own exercises that I got as I sit in a moment of waiting right now. As I record this episode, I am one day away from finding out some pretty serious news, and I have no idea which way it's going to go. So I'm right in the midst of this waiting, and I wanted to share this moment with you. So I hope that this episode will feel hopeful and grounded. There will be no toxic positivity. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that uncertainty doesn't hurt, because waiting is really hard. And honestly, there is a reason for that. So one thing neuroscience teaches us is that the brain is constantly trying to predict what comes next. Your nervous system is always scanning and asking questions like, am I safe here? What should I prepare for? Is there danger around the corner? Do I have control? Can I relax yet? And uncertainty interrupts that prediction. Your brain likes loops to close. It likes answers and patterns and certainty. And that is why unresolved situations can feel so emotionally exhausting. Your brain tends to treat uncertainty like an unfinished task running in the background. And you may relate to this if you are like me and are someone who has like 150 tabs open on your computer, and then one random tab is playing some music or something, but you can't figure out which one it's coming from, so you're just clicking, trying to find it. That is the way our nervous system acts during uncertainty. Our brain keeps scanning and checking and analyzing. We'll replay conversations, imagine scenarios, and a lot of times those are worst-case scenarios that we're imagining. And this can do some damage to us. This increases stress hormones like cortisol. It keeps our body in a heightened state of alertness. And this is why sometimes these times of waiting can actually make people physically tired. And this does not mean that you're weak. So if you are going through this, remember this. You are not being dramatic. You are not failing at faith. Your brain is trying to solve a problem that it doesn't currently have enough information to solve. And so, unfortunately, this is where our brains can kind of, mess with us a bit. Sometimes when our brains can't get certainty, it will try to create it. And that is where our good old friend catastrophizing comes in. So we start to think thoughts like, well, if they haven't responded, clearly this whole relationship is ruined. Or if this thing hasn't happened yet in my life, it absolutely never will. Or if I don't know the answer to this, maybe the answer is automatically bad. Our brains will often prefer a certain negative story over an unresolved uncertainty because, at least in that certainty, even if it's negative, it feels safer to our brains than ambiguity. And this explains why waiting can sometimes become emotionally consuming if we're not careful. We can start to live in imagined futures instead of a present reality. And this is where neuroscience and faith can help to bring us back. So let's talk a little bit about the faith side of waiting now. One thing that I really appreciate about Scripture is that it doesn't sanitize waiting. The Bible is full of folks who are waiting. We have David, Abraham, Hannah, Joseph, the disciples. Even Jesus experienced anguish and uncertainty when he was waiting in Gethsemane. Waiting in Scripture is rarely presented as emotionally easy, but I think sometimes with modern Christian culture, it unintentionally pressures people to act like the real faith means you're never struggling emotionally. Like you have to just be strong and, if you're waiting for some big thing, be stoic about it. But I don't actually see that in Scripture. I see folks being really, really honest with God. You see things like lament. You see questions and grief, fear. There's a lot of hope that is mixed with exhaustion. So let's be clear that faith is not pretending that you're fine while you wait. Faith looks more like continuing to trust God while also being honest about how hard the waiting is. And this distinction really matters because if you've followed me for any length of time, you know how much I cannot stand toxic positivity. And a toxically positive response to waiting might be something like, if you were really faithful, you wouldn't have any struggles at all. But we know that's not true. Healthy faith says you can struggle and still trust God. And those are very different messages. But I also think we have to be careful not to over-spiritualize our suffering, because sometimes people will say things like, well, everything happens for a reason. God must be teaching you something in this. The waiting season is a gift. And if you've ever heard any flavor of those when you have been in one of these waiting seasons, it can be so frustrating, right? Because we know, of course, that God works all things for good, but when someone just says to you, well, everything happens for a reason when you're suffering, that just feels like a real dismissal. So, don't be the person that says that. Sometimes we know that waiting just hurts. And sometimes those waiting seasons, a lot of times actually, they do grow us. They do reveal things in us, and they do strengthen our resilience. But it's also really painful. Both of those things can be true. So I think that one of the most comforting things about faith is not some promise that we'll never experience uncertainty or pain, because we all know that that is just not the way it works, right? It is the reminder that uncertainty does not mean abandonment from God. Just because you don't have clarity yet does not mean that God has disappeared. Silence is not absence. And I know how hard that can be to believe when you're in the middle of waiting for something that deeply matters to you. Like I said, I am right there in that moment as I record this. But I think sometimes resilience looks a lot less like feeling confident all the time and more like staying open to hope one more day. So, what do we actually do while we're waiting? I'm going to go ahead and guess that you, like me, do not need another inspirational quote slapped onto a sunset background. What you really need is a practical way to regulate your nervous system and stay grounded in reality. One thing that I've learned is this. When people are anxious, they will often try to think their way into peaceful thoughts. But a lot of times regulation has to come before that reasoning can come. Your nervous system really matters. Your body matters. And this is just how God created us. We need to work within the parameters of the biology that we have. So this is why practices like breathing and movement, prayer, worship, gratitude journaling, walking, grounding exercises, or even simply just getting enough rest can help to bring your brain out of survival mode. And another important thing to learn is how to stay in the present. Because uncertainty pulls us into a million imagined futures. We start thinking things like, what if this never works out? What if my life falls apart? What if I'm stuck forever? What if I never get another job? What if I never have another friend? And meanwhile, God is here repeatedly pointing people back to today. Remember, He gives us our daily bread. He gives us grace and strength for today, not 10 years into the future. And I think this matters physiologically too, because the nervous system can often tolerate one day much better than an imagined catastrophic future. So here is something I really want you to hear today. Don't make permanent conclusions in your temporary uncertainty. I'm going to say that again. Don't make permanent conclusions in temporary uncertainty. Just because you don't know how the story ends yet doesn't mean the story is over. So instead of just talking about waiting today, I wanted to actually walk through an exercise from Renewed Mind that was specifically created for a moment just like this. As I mentioned, I am going through a time where I am waiting for an answer. As I record this, I will find out the answer tomorrow. But as I sit here in this, for the last couple of weeks, I've been dealing with this time of waiting. And if you don't know what Renewed Mind is, it is an app that I created that combines faith and neuroscience to build emotional resilience over time. The exercises that you get are individualized to you, they're personalized to your situation. And honestly, sometimes I think we don't really just need information. We need regulation, reflection, and space to breathe. So I am going to walk you through an exercise that I got in the app, and hopefully it will help you as well. So this exercise is called the Waiting Room Breath Reset. And this exercise is based on the breath-based grounding type of exercises that are popular in neuroscience. So here it goes. You're sitting in a kind of waiting room right now. No answer yet, just uncertainty. That in-between space is genuinely one of the hardest places for your brain to be. Let's work with your nervous system instead of fighting it. Step 1. Land in your body. Place one hand on your chest. Feel it rise and fall. You're here. You're okay right now, in this moment. Step 2. Try 4-2-6 breathing. Inhale slowly for 4 seconds. Hold gently for 2 seconds. Exhale fully for 6 seconds. Repeat that 4 to 5 times. That longer exhale is the key. It's your body's built-in calm signal. Now, listeners, if you want to go ahead and pause and do those breathing exercises and then hit play when you're ready for step 3. Step 3. Name it out loud or in a whisper. Say, I don't know what's coming, and I can handle not knowing right now. Just one breath at a time. Step 4. One small anchor. Think of one thing, just one, that is stable today. A meal you'll eat, a show you like, something small and real. Why it works. When uncertainty hits, your brain's prediction system goes into overdrive trying to solve what it can't yet know, which spikes your stress response hard. The extended exhale in 4-2-6 breathing directly shifts your interoceptive signals, giving your brain updated body data that says, safe enough right now. That's literally how you interrupt the spiral. And there's something in Psalm 46 about finding stillness, even when everything feels like it's shaking, worth sitting with today. So that is the end of the exercise, and if you would like to try this out for yourself, I invite you to head to renewedmind.app where you can get a free week to try this out for yourself. So, Resilient One, if you are waiting for an answer right now, I just want you to know that you are not weak for finding this waiting period hard. Waiting is demanding mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to remain open-hearted in the middle of uncertainty. Not forcing positivity, of course, not just pretending that everything feels okay, and certainly not bypassing grief or fear, but just continuing to show up, continuing to breathe, continuing to trust God one day at a time. You don't need to have everything figured out today, and uncertainty is absolutely not proof that you are forgotten. Sometimes resilience is simply this: staying open to hope one more day. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If this episode encouraged you, you can check out Renewed Mind at renewedmind.app for more neuroscience and faith-informed exercises designed to help you navigate real life with greater resilience. And if you did find this helpful, if you could share this episode with a friend, I would be so grateful. As always, keep rebuilding, keep going, even through those dumpster fires. See you next time. Thanks for listening to Diamonds and Dumpster Fires. If today reminded you that resilience is a practice, not a personality trait, you're in the right place. Keep showing up, keep rebuilding, and don't forget, even diamonds start as pressure and mess. For more faith-filled encouragement and real-life tools to help you heal and grow, check out the show notes for some free resources and ways to stay connected. See you next time.